Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. And as promised, we are back to three different stories today. Good, bad, and crazy for you. Jim, let's start with the good, which has to include a whole lot of bad. The crazy pro-Palestinian, some would say pro-Hamas demonstrators were out in force on Monday. And in a number of major cities, they really created havoc, stopping traffic and pretty much grinding certain parts of the city to a halt. Here's just a quick sampling. ABC News 7 in San Francisco. Both directions of the Golden Gate Bridge have been shut down due to a pro-Palestinian protest. Demonstrators have blocked the southbound direction of Highway 101. It's the second protest causing major backups on Bay Area roadways. Not to be outdone, New York City. Hundreds of anti-Israeli protesters wreaked havoc in Lower Manhattan on Monday, storming the Brooklyn Bridge and grinding traffic to a halt on its Manhattan-bound side. Chicago, they decided that they would really make an impression and try to win people's hearts and minds by making them miss their flights. All outbound lanes on the Kennedy Expressway at O'Hare International Airport have been blocked by pro-Palestinian protesters. However, the protesters did not succeed everywhere. As you might expect, Florida was a different story. DeSantis Press Secretary Christina Pushaw reporting officers responded to over 100 protesters who were in front of the Bayside Marketplace in downtown Miami around 1 p.m. Monday. City of Miami officers appeared in riot gear on horseback and on motorcycles to prevent the protesters from advancing. Police officers were joined by state troopers in armored vehicles. And Skyforce 7 flew over the area as protesters were being arrested and taken into a transport van. Several protesters were also seen being dragged from the street by police after they tried to lie down and block traffic to Port Miami. After repeatedly trying to block traffic, some were arrested by the police, which is a very different scenario from these deep blue areas, Jim, where not only do they create havoc, they might finally get removed, but they get a slap on the wrist, if anything, by the local authorities. Once again, Florida proving you can deal with this stuff and you can deal with it effectively.
Yeah, it's simply a matter of will and a sense of, do the local authorities see this as something they need to seriously react to? Or is this something that's, well, they're exercising their First Amendment rights. We'll wait for them to calm down. We don't want to escalate the situation. It's basically the Biden foreign policy applied to the streets of our cities. And I saw the video floating around yesterday afternoon. Apparently in Miami and Florida, there were a bunch of people who were like, they would use PVC piping, usually to connect their arms. I don't know whether they handcuff their arms together inside or something, but the gist is that it makes it much harder. They think, we will literally lock arms and it'll be much harder for the police to remove us. What also makes it much harder to get up. So all that happened is a bunch of cops just, grab one free limb wherever they can find it, a couple of legs and an arm, and somebody grabs the head, and they just lift them up, move them over to the sidewalk, and then they put them down, and I think they just leave them there. I assume at some point they arrest them, but there's kind of this sense. But the thing is that now you're on the ground, you're spread eagle, there's nothing these guys can do. They can't get back up and get back to the street because they're all, handcuffed together. And so just somebody was sharing around, I think it was Bonchi over at Red State, who was saying that, like, look, terrorist simps, sympathizers, I assume, learning that Florida is not New York is the best thing you'll see today. First of all, the people who are trying to get to O'Hare Airport or trying to cross the Golden Gate, these people have no say over Israeli policy. Why are you hassling them? What did they ever do to you? It is this utterly absurd and outrageous directing of, I'm going to make your life miserable, ordinary American, even though you have no say whatsoever about this issue that makes me upset. There's another video of somebody going in and barging into Starbucks. And Starbucks, you cannot hide from us. Well, Starbucks has always been there, right? They spend a lot of money on advertising. They're not hiding. They would really like to know, do you want a grande, a venti, or a tall? That's all they really want to know here. And so, the customers, none of these people have anything to do with what you're so upset about. You want to protest outside the Israeli embassy, the Israeli consulate. At least that's in the ballpark of the people. Those are the representatives of the people you're upset with. Ordinary commuters have nothing to do with this. We probably also should note that Senator Tom Cotton, who I'm usually a big fan of, tweeted out yesterday, quote, I encourage people who get stuck behind the pro-Hamas mobs blocking traffic, take matters into your own hands to get them out of the way. It's time to put an end to this nonsense. Well, I definitely agree with the second sentence. I really cannot endorse that first sentence. I'm surprised that he didn't quickly take that down, simply because, like, as much as we all understand and sympathize with the desire, some idiot standing in front of your car and won't move out of the road, you got to get to where you're going. If you run them down, there is a good chance you'll be charged with a crime. I find it near miraculous. We have not seen more physical altercations over situations like this, whether it's ambulances that need to get through, or you got to pick up your kid from school or pick up your kid from daycare or something like that. Like, but I cannot see, like, legally, this is not good advice. This is and I understand the sentiment, I understand the desire, but there's always a chance that particularly in one of these cities with a, Soros-funded liberal district attorney, they'll decide you're the villain. They'll decide you're the person who committed the crime. And as outrageous as it is somebody to block the road, you don't have a right to use your vehicle as a weapon to get them out of the way. And so, 50 lashes with a wet noodle to you, Tom Cotton, I can't say I think that's a good idea. You may be setting people up for legal trouble down the road. By the way, Greg, wouldn't it, considering it's Tom Cotton, wouldn't it just make more sense to deploy the National Guard?
Absolutely. Might take a little while for them to get there, but that's a good point. And I've seen in some areas, I think it was more with climate protesters, might have been in Italy or somewhere, I can't remember exactly where it was, where the motorists got out and dragged the people out of the way. And I don't know that would necessarily protect you legally in some of these blue cities. Anyway, just look at Daniel Penny, who's was the guy arrested for protecting people on the subway, whereas people who commit the violence are not. But there's never been any indication that this actually changes people's minds. It's just a matter of how the media covers it. Oh, look at these people standing up for what they believe. If these were, pick your conservative issue, pro-gun, pro-life, whatever issue it is, there would be a completely different reaction from the media, especially to people missing their flights, not being able to cross a bridge or whatever it is. So the double standard here is alive and well.
I also think it says something about most causes on the right, that it never crosses pro-lifers' mind. Hey, let's really inconvenience commuters. Hey, let's make it impossible for people to catch their flight. That'll make people agree with us. No, it doesn't really work that way.
All right, let's talk about 4 Patriots. At 4patriots.com/martini, you can get the new deluxe 3-month survival food kits, which are back in stock. More than 200,000 smart Americans agree this is survival food that tastes good. And look, you just don't know when disaster or some other inconvenience is going to strike, and you need to cook meals in a very, very simple way. These 3-month food kits give you 688 total servings, or about 8 per day, and they give you about 1,500 calories per day. Great recipes from mac and cheese to pancakes to spaghetti and lasagna. Disaster-resistant packaging, 100% satisfaction guaranteed. Also, don't forget about their great deals on the Leafy Greens Hydro Garden Seed Kit, the 4 Patriots Bountiful Green Plant Food, the Sauna Wrap Therapeutic Blanket, and the Solar Go Fridge with Solar Panel. You can stash food away and be confident that when a disaster strikes you and your family, you will be ready. Go to 4patriots.com/martini to get the deluxe 3-month survival food kit and the peace of mind you deserve. Plus, get free shipping on orders over $97. That's the number 4, patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now. And if at first you succeed, you definitely try again if you are on the left. And the thing they specifically succeeded on in 2022 that we're going to talk about is creating groups that convince Republican primary voters to vote for the person that they think is less likely to win the general election. We saw it in a number of races around the 2022 midterms, and now they're doing it again in 2024. The latest example, as reported on by Politico, focuses on moderate, to be sure, to be generous perhaps, Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania. This group, True Patriots PA, which was established on April 5th, is going after Fitzpatrick for not being conservative enough. Their message in one point says, "We sent Brian Fitzpatrick to D.C. to represent our values. Instead, he became best friends with Kamala Harris and the Democrats." And another says, "MAGA is ready to bag the biggest rhino in Congress," which, hey, if you're running against Brian Fitzpatrick, you're welcome to use that if you want to, if you think it'll work. But these people are not interested in electing MAGA folks to Congress. The Politico story says the group's treasurer, Megan Olson, is listed as Sacramento, California-based, and is also, separately, the treasurer for Congressman Eric Swalwell's campaign, and she did not immediately respond to request for comment. Asked for comment, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee referred to a January report in the Washington Post in which its chair, Suzanne DelBene of Washington, urged the group to stop meddling in GOP primaries and indicated it adopted her recommendation. Well, apparently it hasn't, if they just got going on April 5th here, Jim. And apparently this, hey, you guys really, really shouldn't do that from the DCCC doesn't exactly strike me as genuine.
No, and look, a couple points about Brian Fitzpatrick. His district basically encompasses Bucks County. I'm not going to say I know this exceptionally well, but my in-laws live up there. Classic suburbia, lots of soccer moms. This, in other words, like, so if you're saying, oh, this guy's a moderate Republican, this is a moderate Republican district. This is a district Biden carried. I believe Hillary Clinton carried or came very close to carry. This is about as close as you're going to get to a 50-50 district. And so you shouldn't expect the guy to have a phenomenally high conservative rating score or something. I went and I checked. He voted with the Trump administration's position 61.8% of the time. That's actually not that bad considering the demographics of where he recognizes. I think, 538 used to say, based on how Trump did in the district, you'd expect the member who represented it to vote the Trump way 46% of the time. So Fitzpatrick is actually fairly, willing to stick his neck out for the more rightward position more often than you would think. Now, if somebody wants to run a challenge against him, fine. I just, again, if you're going to do that, be aware of the district you're trying to represent and what it prefers. And, you're not going to get some Tea Party type. You're not going to get some Freedom Caucus type. It's just not what, what's going to get elected in that particular district. And so my guess is Fitzpatrick is not somebody who's at a high risk of losing this primary. But in 2022, this worked for the Democrats every single time. Every single primary challenger ended up beating the moderate, anti-Trump, non-Trump ones, Senate primaries, House primaries, and in every single one of the cases, they lost. Dear Republican voters, you don't have to fall for this every single time. You don't have to, you're allowed to say, well, if the Democrats think this guy's bad, we better vote for... No, sometimes the Democrats are trying to trick you. And when you start seeing someone's, though, is a conservative, a dangerous conservative, wink, wink, you should be able... I just wish our voters could be a little more discerning, a little more aware of that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, that, and my other thought was that, well, okay, if you're the Democrats and you believe that these MAGA Republicans are the most dangerous threat to democracy anybody's ever seen, well, then you really shouldn't be running ads trying to help them get elected. You should want them beaten in the primaries. You should want the Brian Fitzpatricks up there. Because your attitude should be, we'd rather, have a Brian Fitzpatrick who we can work with on certain issues than to have some extreme dangerous MAGA types who you believe, honest to God, is a, major threat to the country. Eliminate these guys as quickly as possible, and then you eliminate the worst case scenario. And I was hoping in 2022, this would backfire on the Democrats, that one of these guys would get elected and to be able to say, see, this is why you're not supposed to do this. Nope, every single one of these guys lost. So as far as the Democrats are concerned, this is the ideal way to go about this. This works every time. And we will see if this works out in the Pennsylvania area. Like I said, it's Bucks County. It doesn't seem like terrible MAGA, territory. And then again, when I was back there, then run up to 2020, there were a lot of Trump flags. I know Trump didn't carry Bucks County, but he has more appeal than you might think. So we'll see how things shake out. Fitzpatrick has been there for a while. He's always amongst the Democrats' top targets, and they always fall short against it. But he generally doesn't win by a wide margin in the general election. So I don't know if he has got that much, support that he can spare. But again, you'd like to think we could have normal politics in which, Republicans tried to elect the best Republican they could, Democrats elected the best Democrat that we could. But we can't have that, Greg. That's too nice for us. We can't have nice things.
And so they obviously champion the one that they think is easier to beat. And like you said, in 2022, they turned out to be right. So just because it says something about liberty or freedom in the title of the group that sponsors the ad, do a little digging and figure out exactly what's going on there, because they're not going to come right out and say, we're endorsing this guy because we think it'll be easier for Democrats to beat them. That's not how it works. They're trying to be surreptitious about it, and so make smart choices in your primaries. I'll tell you what's a smart choice, though, and that's Fast Growing Trees, the biggest online nursery in the United States with more than 10,000 different kinds of plans, and more than 2 million happy customers right here in the U.S. They have everything you could possibly want, like fruit trees, palm trees, evergreens, houseplants, and so much more.
Whatever you're interested in, they have it for you. Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to order online, and your plants will be shipped directly to your door in just 1 or 2 days. And along with their 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee, they offer free plant consultation forever.
You can use these plants to add ambiance to your home for years and years, or you can eat them. We got oregano and basil and dill, and we've already incorporated some of that into our meals. Fantastic stuff. And the Alive and Thrive guarantee, by the way, also legit. This spring, Fast Growing Trees has the best deals online, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to the 3 Martini Lunch get an additional 15% off your first purchase when using the code Martini at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code Martini at checkout. fastgrowingtrees.com, code Martini. The offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now. And yesterday was day one, basically meaning the start of jury selection for Donald Trump in this kind of bizarre Manhattan hush money trial. It all relates to paying off Stormy Daniels prior to the 2016 election. It had been a misdemeanor, and the statute of limitations had run out, and then the law changed. And so Alvin Bragg, the DA in Manhattan, who is one of these radical folks, is trying to nail Donald Trump on a felony. So yesterday, jury selection starts, and you've got this judge, Juan Merchan, who is overseeing the trial. The first move from the Trump team was to get him to recuse himself, which he did not. And then Merchan told Trump that he had to be in court every day that the trial was in session, and if he wasn't, he would be arrested. As time went forward, the Trump team argued that, okay, well, Trump's son, Barron, is going to be graduating from high school on Friday, May 17th, so can we please let the former president attend his son's graduation, which is in Palm Beach, Florida? Merchan did not officially say no, but he said it really depends on if we are on time and where we are in the trial. It also had the same reaction to Trump's immunity case going before the Supreme Court in the not too distant future. And so, Jim, if you're on trial, you should be in court. But the idea that you can't pause for one day for the guy who's not being accused of a violent felony here to attend his son's graduation seems to be the exact opposite of what you would want if you're trying to present yourself as being an impartial judge in this case.
Yeah, and look, I suppose it's possible that this judge has just decided to stop trying, that this judge is going to make the decisions that he thinks is right and doesn't care what anybody thinks outside the courtroom. But look, this case is not happening in a vacuum. It's happening when one of the defendant is the Republican nominee for president. It's a high-stakes election. It is a close, hard-fought election. According to most of the polling, Trump is ahead, although it looks like Biden might be gaining a little bit of ground. I'm kind of left befuddled with the sense of like, what is so important about that date that they have to be in court? This is, the verdict is still going to come down well before the election. Defendants have all kinds of important events in their lives. You only watch your child graduate high school once. I assume it's a weekday. I assume it would be a one-day delay. It's not like he's asking for a whole week to be involved in something else. This just seems like a very reasonable request on the part of Trump, the sort of request that a lot of Americans will relate to. And this just seems like the judge not being reasonable. Yes, there's an interest in a speedy trial, but both sides have filed all kinds of motions that have dragged this out for a very long time. Like, I get why, what is there on this date? And this judge clearly doesn't care if this comes across as unreasonable or unduly harsh or something like that. Trump, no doubt, will beat the drum on this. But for this case, I think Trump's got a point. Why should Barron pay the price for something like that? So it is. I wrote today in the Morning Jolt about these the hush money trial. My colleague Noah Rothman says this will have an effect on the 2024 presidential election. Noah's a really smart guy, but I'm just not convinced. I just kind of feel like this is all priced in. Everybody already knows what they think of Trump. Everybody knows what they think of Biden. Everybody, of all the 4 criminal trials, charges, cases against Trump, this one seems like the one is the biggest stretch and is the least consequential. I don't even think Americans really care that much about the payments to Stormy Daniels. They don't like it. They don't approve it. I don't think they necessarily think this is necessarily criminal. And I think this whole thing, this is the one where you have the easiest case to arguing this is a witch hunt. This is a prosecutor who wants to make his bones by going after Trump. This is, and so decisions like this are just going to make people, I think, throw up their hands and say, this whole thing is nonsense. There are a lot of people who hate Trump who are going to say, oh, no, this is totally, you should have thought of that before you committed the crime kind of mentality. But I'm out of all the aspects of the 2024 presidential election, the court cases against Trump are the part that I think are least interesting and probably not actually going to be all that consequential. I mean, maybe I'm projecting here. Maybe because because I care so little about this case, I assume other people don't, and maybe they don't. But my guess is that we are talking on election night or shortly thereafter about who won the election. I don't think we'll be talking about the Stormy Daniels payments. I just don't think it's going to be a big deal compared to the economy, the border, chaos overseas, and things like that. So we'll see how things shake out. But again, judge really, if the judge's opinion, if public opinion of the judge sinks, it's decisions like this that will cause it. And just seems like a really unforced error on his part.
Own goal was the idea going on in my head. It's on a Friday. The graduation's on a Friday, so it wouldn't be that much of a stretch to take a 3-day weekend there. And as Andy McCarthy said, I think it was about Jack Smith in the classified documents case, and maybe it was the D.C. Case against Trump as well, related to January 6th. He says, the government does not have a right to a speedy trial. The defendant has the right to a speedy trial. And so that should factor in here as well. But if the guy had just granted an exception for one day, nobody would be talking about it. So, Jim, good to be with you today. I know you're out tomorrow, so I'll see you again on Thursday.
See you Thursday, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast if you don't already, and tell your friends about us as well. Also, get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Tuesday, and join us again tomorrow for the next 3 Martini Lunch.